Sermon 174 of Nahjul Balagah was around the verse Inna ladhina qalu rabbunallahu thumma istaqamu tatanazzalu alayhimul malaikatu la takhafu wa la tahzanu wabshiru bil jannati allati kuntum tu'adun, which is a reminder of what is biblically called the Shekinah. And it doesn't look like we have the word Sakina here, but one of the senses of that is the descent of the light beings. And how the people are supposed to realize the promise of paradise hereafter, and to be of good feeling, of good emotion. And the Vedas also talk about the Devas, the shining ones, coming in likewise, presencing without being worshipped. And honestly, you look at what the so-called magicians, as a lot of people like to be called, do, it doesn't make a difference, except sometimes it would deter the presence of such beings when they invoke them and evoke them. Certainly whatever is present is provoked, so we don't need to indulge in that. So we're reminded in this sermon to find our benefit in what God has sent. Remember how other verses indicate that Quran is the speech of God. Such is known so that we don't have any excuse. Sometimes doing what is right, or otherwise being on what is right, is not the easiest. It's not always pleasant to our vehicles of body and mind. Sometimes being on the wrong seems pleasant. We should focus on correcting ourselves to not do, to do. And in the early time of our waking, preferably between dawn and sunrise is when we first get up, whether we go to sleep after our prayers or not. And then in the evenings or the nights that we do this muhasabah, as it's called. And of course, the scripture of the age advises us in all aspects of our journey. One of the things that my media should be indicating to people that answers are everywhere, but some of the truth, some of the good is had in some paths, but there's stuff missing out of what's useful and right among these paths. But Islam has everything that is good and true. It supports. That's what sets it apart. It has that answer for your spiritual journey in regards to everything, at least in the broad form, if not the specific form. If you rest with Quran, everything's going to add to your guidance and cut back from your blindness, cut back from your wrongdoing account, and from the cure of what spiritually ails, then other things are going to be helped. What is destined is either already in place or it's going to be in place. We need to be ever in our worship. Put our speech into it. Put our movement into it. Put our feeling into it. Put our emotion into it. Regard the property of others. Realize our limitations, but work towards doing more about injustice, doing more about, like when you work out, it can even be painful until you get used to it. So we need to work out our sense of what we like, of what we're able to do. And what's actually expected of us in our condition. Saying 359 reminds us that being a person of our desires limits us and increases the hardship upon us. Saying 350 reminds us to not judge anything as wrong if you can find good in it. Saying 361 reminds us that ask God first when we have a need. But when we do such, we should do benedictions upon Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and other such phrases.